Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Paceroos Podcast, the only Australian NBA podcast with a bias toward the Indiana Pacers, and coming to you 3-0 after last year's 0-3 start. Guys, I don't know whether you can remember a year ago, about early November, we recorded a really sad podcast when we lost the first 3 games of the season. I think 2 of them were to Detroit at that point, so it was a really sad start to the season. Not to be for this year. Coach Nate Bjorkgren is 3-0 in his NBA career, the most winningest coach in NBA history so far, which is pretty exciting. And victories over the Knicks, the Bulls, and then the game that mattered, our playoff rival, the Boston Celtics today. Domas Sabonis coming up clutch late. Malcolm Brogdon with a fantastic defensive play. Justin, I'll start with you. The first 3 games of the season, what have you liked so far from this same Pacers team with a bit of a new look to it?
Yeah, it's a lot to like. I'd say the biggest thing is probably Nate Bjorkgren, his adjustments in game, just night and day compared to Nate McMillan. You can tell that, like, from anyone who's watched the Pacers last year to this year, you can tell that out of timeout plays he draws up. Like they were doing a box and one on Jason Tatum today, which, threw him off pace. They got some stops and actually took the lead when they switched up defensively. So last year, everyone knew what Pacers were going to give them on the defensive end. This year, it's, obviously coaches don't know what the Pacers are going to throw at them. So apart from the obvious saying Sabonis, playing like a monster, you'd have to say Nate Bjorkgren.
Alex, it's nice to have a possible MVP candidate playing for us, isn't it? Domas Sabonis has been dominant.
And you're finally getting some media attention, more posts than Alex Caruso for maybe the first time in history. So, the Pacers are getting some love from national media, and all those people who said we're going to miss the playoffs haven't been talking too much lately, which is good to see as well.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. A really good and consistent first 3 games. It's really nice to see some adjustments being made. As you said, the box and one, Justin, worked really well today. I think all of our starters have had games across the first 3 games where they've looked really good. Victor, I think, had a really good game in game 2. Miles has been consistent on the defensive end. Probably hasn't found his shot yet, but has looked pretty good. Brogdon's been really consistent. Warren had that game against Chicago where he obviously looked really good, and Domas has obviously been dominant in all 3 games with a triple-double in the second game and a career high in the first one. So I think, the consistency we want to see out of this starting lineup is clearly there. Remains to be seen whether it can continue, but it's nice to see some adjustments being made. We won't go any further into these games because the majority of this episode is going to be dominated by our second interview in as many weeks, guys. We've had another special guest come on the podcast. Justin, do you want to introduce this guy and just talk a bit about the process of getting him on the podcast and what he's up to these days and how that ties into, I guess, where we are in the world?
Yeah, definitely. I've always been a big advocate of getting Donald Sloan on the podcast because, we always try and tie in our Australian fan base to the Indiana fan base that listens to the podcast, which obviously it's very few and far between who we can actually get to tick off boxes of Australian and Pacers. There's a very small amount of people in the world that have that connection. So Donald Sloan actually plays for my hometown, Adelaide 36ers now. So he's currently in quarantine in Sydney. I think today's his last day, and he's getting ready for the NBL season. So, yeah, we went back and forth over some messaging. He was super keen to do it, gave us great answers. I'm sure Alex can go into it more. The interview was a lot better than I expected. He gave a lot of information that I never knew about the Pacers teams of the Eastern Conference Finals. And, it's definitely a great listen.
And guys, I was on the flight from hell yesterday from Launceston, Tasmania through to Melbourne. We had some wild weather. So Justin, Alex, we were able to get a replacement in to help do the interview that was completely overqualified to be there, but did a fantastic job. Alex, do you want to introduce the special guest host for this interview?
Yeah, massive shout out to our man, Tom Hersz, who's a fellow Pacers fan from Melbourne, lives near me. So that's pretty cool to see. But he's a amazing cover of the NBL. He's got way more knowledge than I'm sure all of us 3 combined. So he was a great get. And as Justin alluded to, Donald gave some amazing answers. He went way more in depth than we thought. And there's a great soundbite about Lance in there. So you guys are going to love this episode.
Yeah, it's crazy. I obviously hadn't heard the interview until you guys sent it to me after it was conducted, and the Lance answer, or more specifically the Evan Turner answer, I think was the one that that caught my eye, that made my eyes go pretty wide. It's crazy. I think KP the other week gave us some great responses and some information that we weren't expecting. Donald Sloan backed that up in spades. I think he was fantastic. So without further ado, we'll now play the interview between the Paceroos and Donald Sloan. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, also across the podcast media platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, and social media at the Paceroos on Twitter and Instagram. This is the Paceroos with Donald Sloan.
Welcome back to the Paceroos Podcast, and today we actually have two very special guests. We've got Tom Hersz filling in for Adam, who is a journalist for the NBL. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, Justin. Thanks for having me. Great to finally be with you guys, talking Pacers with fellow Aussies. I'm glad that I found you guys, and you're doing a great job, and happy to be here today.
No worries. Thanks for that. And a very special guest, which we're thrilled to have, is former Indiana Pacer and current Adelaide 36er from our hometown, Donald Sloan. Welcome to the Paceroos.
Yeah, happy to be here, guys. Happy to be here.
Good man, good man. How are you enjoying Australia? We were just chatting before the show. You're currently in 13th day of quarantine in Sydney.
Yeah, it's I'm actually happy to finally be here. It's been a lot of uncertainty with when the league would start and pushing back the dates and actually getting me over here. Originally, like I said, I was supposed to be here beginning of November, but of course with everything that's been going on in the world, they pushed for a later start date, so that pushed my time of coming over back a little bit. But finally here, so glad to be here.
Yeah, and you've obviously played all over the world. You've played in China, played in Germany, Philippines, I believe. So, what excites you the most about playing here in Australia? And did you know anything about the NBL before signing with the 36ers?
Yeah, actually, over the past, during all those times, I think actually, I take that back. When I actually signed with Indiana, that's when I kind of took notice of the NBL, because I think that's when Josh Childress was over here. I think he was the big signing that everybody paid attention to, that came over, NBA player, statue of that nature. So I kind of took notice back in 2013 about this league. But over the course of the years, I've had numerous of opponents, numerous of teammates that have came over here and spent time here, throughout their career. And that being Carrick Felix, DJ Kennedy, Jerome Randall, Shannon Shorter, Casper Ware, Bryce Cotton, for sure, as we all, we're familiar with that. And, so I've always paid attention to it. And just knowing that it's a real competitive league. Like I said, I spent a lot of time in the Philippines. I spent a lot of time in China, for sure. And comparing it to Australia, it's a different style of basketball. And, I'm ready to own in on that, because I know it's not going to be a cakewalk, as what's the guy, Chamaside, as he says. It's not a it's not a cupcake league.
Not a cupcake league.
And that I know. That I know for sure, just by guys that I know that have came over here and played, and the numbers that they've averaged and the numbers that they've had, and the difficulty that they've had of adjusting to the league. It's a gritty league. It's a hard-nosed league. Just think of a lot of Dellavedovas.
Yeah.
So, a lot of those type of guys. So I'm really looking forward to it. Like I said, I've always been a guy that accept challenges. Played with a chip on my shoulder. I always wanted to prove. Even going to the Pacers, and a lot of people wondering, how and why. But I've always been a guy to always want to prove. So, what other better way to do it than coming here and doing that?
Great. Donald, one of your teammates this season with Adelaide is going to be the first Australian under the Next Stars program. Someone who's already getting a bit of first-round draft buzz for next year's NBA draft, and being talked about as a bit of a rare talent. His combination of his size, his skill, and his playmaking. I'm obviously talking about Josh Giddey. So what do you know about Josh? Have you spoken to him? And I guess what kind of mentoring role do you expect to play with him this season, given that he wants to get to where you've been in the past?
Oh man, he's his future is bright. You know, I think his style of play, his length, you know, his skill set, ability to play, make, and pass. There's no doubt in my mind that he won't be in the NBA next year. And that's just seeing, you know, film from practice, film from the couple preseason games that they've had. Like his mentality isn't, it isn't a kid. Like he's far along to where I think he's ready for the next step. And of course, you know, he has to take care of business here and now, and we're not thinking too far along. But if it was up to me, it's a no-brainer that, you know, he's going to be at the next level. And so for me, coming into the situation, you know, it's not competition. It's letting him know that I know where you're going next, and I want to help you be able to transition into that role, you know, whether, you know, it's communication, whether it's showing you by doing, whether it's showing you through film, whether it's being tough on you and letting you know this is what to expect on the next level type thing. And we've talked a lot. You know, he's actually been one of the guys, him and Daniel Dillon and Brandon Tays have been a few guys that have kind of locked in with me since I've been in quarantine. Even when I signed, you know, even back home, you know, they've kind of reached out, and he for sure has reached out a lot, kind of, you know, picking my brain and staying in contact because he know the relationship that we're going to have, you know, for us coexisting on the court. Because like you say, he's a great playmaker. You know, he's a skilled guy. You know, he has length. So for him, you know, he fits in that system of the NBA today, where the, you know, guys that are interchangeable in positions 1 through 4, and you know, he knows that. And so I think the way that he's been reaching out and kind of open-minded about it, and you know, coming to me is it's been great. You know, he's doing the right things. You know, I think he realizes that what's next for him. So.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised to hear that. He comes from a great basketball family. His dad was a pro in the NBL for years. I know his dad quite well. So, you know, he's got good people around him, and he's definitely headed in the right path. So that's great to hear that you guys are already in touch. One of your former Pacer teammates, Orlando Johnson, is actually going to be in the league this year as well with the Brisbane Bullets. Have you guys talked at all in the lead up to you both coming out here, and, you know, kind of what to expect this season?
We have. Funny thing about it is when I first signed, you know, and this is, you know, a credit to, you know, either my resume or just me being, or them thinking that I know anything about basketball. You know, they, you know, Coach Connor and, you know, Jeff, they came to me and asked, you know, who do you think would be a good fit, you know, for us? Who do you think would be a good pairing with you, with this team that, you know, could possibly help us, you know, do the things that we want to do? And of course, we have Tony Crocker. That's who we want. That's who we have, and we're going to do amazing things. But just a short list of players that I gave him, he was on that list. Orlando Johnson was one of the guys that I recommended that we take a look at. You know, that we, you know, kind of see, you know, what's going on there, because I know the type of player he is. You know, spending time with him in Indiana, knowing his journey. You know, knowing that he's that similar player. You know, had to work his way in, had to earn it, you know, had to find a way to prove himself night in and night out, even in Indiana, you know, being an NBA player already. So, yeah, that's my guy. I've talked to him quite a bit, actually. Like I say, when they asked me, you know, what short list of players that I had in mind, you know, that could be a wing running mate, he was one of the guys that I mentioned to them. And, you know, it's fortunate and unfortunate that, you know, he's going to Brisbane and not with us. But even while he's been in quarantine over the past actually 20 days, because he had to re-quarantine, you know, we've stayed in contact. You know, we've talked while he's at his hotel and I'm at mine, and expectations this year, and, you know, just different things. But yeah, that's going to be a sight to see, because I know the type of player he is. I know how hungry he is, and I know that type of chip that he plays with and wanting to prove himself, you know, night in and night out.
Well, you know, Jeff used to be with Brisbane, so I wonder if maybe he put in a good word for Orlando up there, and that's how he ended up there. But it's great that he's come into the league either way. So nice.
Yeah.
Sweet. You've got a bit of a two-part question, Donald. Speaking more about NBA and your NBA journey. you've played with some great teammates. I had a look, Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Paul George. Who would you say is the most talented player you've played with? And then who's the toughest player you've ever had to guard on the court?
That's tough because you just named three of possibly the top 10 players in the NBA.
Got to choose one, Donald. Got to choose one.
I got to choose one. I would have to. That's tough. I would have to say at this point in their careers, I would probably have to say Anthony Davis, just because of his versatility. Just because of the way the game is played now, opposed to even 5 years ago. So I would probably have to say Anthony Davis. Kyrie is special. Paul George is special. He did go through a little rough patch, but I think now we're seeing playoff P. I think now we're seeing Indiana Pacer Paul George. I think so and that happens. The game of basketball is it's up and down. You can shoot 1,000 shots the night before a game and go into the game the next day and miss everything. So Paul George is playing like Paul George that we all know at this point in the season, where it's pretty early. But so all those guys are special, and I would probably have to say Anthony Davis. But for me, the toughest guy that I have to guard, everybody is special, but either Lillard or Dragic.
Oh, really? That's something different.
Yeah, it's weird because, sports guys and, players, you get a sense of what guys are allowed to do. You get a sense of, okay, I'm not worried that he's going to do too much. I'm not worried that, with Lillard and Kyrie, CJ McCollum, you're always on guard. When they have the ball in their hand, or even when it's not in their hand, you always have to make sure you know where they are, what they're doing, because at any time, the shot is going up. But for somebody like me, there may have been 5 or 6 or 7 shots a game that they knew I would probably get. So they wasn't too pressed on, making sure that I wasn't, trying to do anything offensively. And so that allowed them to rest a little bit on defense. That allowed them to be a little bit more aggressive on offense. And man, when I tell you, Lillard and Dragic, they smelt that from the beginning of the game. It was tough to guard them. And like I said, they're special players, and they're very talented. And it's a different feeling when you have that green light.
I want to take it over to our social media, because you're obviously pretty notorious for your famous I'm Up tweets. So can you talk to us a little bit about how those came about and what the meaning is behind them?
To be quite honest, I actually saw what's the guy's name? He's one of 3 brothers. He's an actor. What show is that? I can't even remember the guy's name, but he's a famous actor, and he literally tweeted, "I'm up" every day, and I noticed that, and I'm like, why is he doing that? And his backstory was, it's time for me to get to my set. It's time for me to get to, and so I kind of took that and was like, I'm up, and now it's time for me to get to work. It's time for me to get better. It's time for me to prove why I'm here. It's time for me to, so every morning I literally tweeted, I'm up, for maybe a year or so, to just let everybody know, I'm at it. I'm working. I don't do a lot of videos. I don't do a lot of showing my workouts. I don't do a lot of, I'm in the gym doing this. It's not necessary. One simple tweet of I'm up, and this is before I had Instagram. One simple tweet of I'm up will let you know Sloan is up and ready to go. And so that kind of carried over to my second year in Indiana, when we had a lot of injuries, when we had a lot of, ailments, throughout the year. Next man up, as Frank Vogel would say. And, it was my time. I'm up, I'm ready, and so it kind of just led me to keep doing it as the year progressed. And, it caught on, And so I think now, with sitting out a whole year, almost playing 3 games in Germany last year, of course, I'm going to get back to that, because at some point, people forget, You know, people forget about you. People disregard. And so, you know, this is a year for me to prove again. You know, the resume goes out the window. You know, yes, I've played in the NBA. Yes, I've done this. Yes, I've done that. But at this point, it's just about solidifying the reason why I was in those places.
Donald, the NBA game has obviously changed a bit since you were in the league, but especially since you were with those Pacers teams, you know, earlier this decade, or sorry, last decade. You know, there's much more focus these days on spacing, on volume, three-point shooting. Every team has stretch bigs now. You know, in the NBL, it's not quite the same. It hasn't quite shifted as much, but it's heading in the same direction in terms of style of play and the focus on those things. How has your game had to adjust over the years, you know, as the game has evolved in that kind of direction?
Well, that's a pretty good question and statement, actually, because I've noticed that over the past few years. I've said to a lot of my friends, you know, who, yeah, man, you know, you can get back in it. You know, you can, you know, one of these teams need to pick you up, and, you know, you have your supporters and you have your team around you and things like that. And I'm just like, well, you know, my style of play and the way that the NBA is played these days is a little different, you know, and that's, you know, that's fine. But now, being that it has changed, I found myself shooting a lot more threes, you know, than I have, you know, been accustomed to. And, you know, like I say, I've never been known as a shooter, but for some reason over the past 3-4 years, that's what I've become and that's what I've worked on, just because I know the game has changed. It's about spacing. It's about length. You know, it's about shooting fast, playing faster, quicker, you know. And so, like you say, the NBL isn't at that point yet like the NBA where they're shooting at the first 5 seconds of the shot clock, but I'm pretty sure it's going to get there. But for me, I think being able to do both, being able to run the team, you know, run the offense, get quality shots, not just quantity shots, you know, just doing the things that the game has really been centered around, you know, over years, you know, not just the past 5 years, you know, just doing those things. So I try not to focus on, you know, getting the shot up within the first 10 seconds. I kind of focus on creating a great shot within the 24 seconds. And so with the NBL, you know, it's a gritty league. You know, it's competitive. You know, guys are picking up 94 feet. You know, like I say, that Deladova style of basketball. And like I say, I'm ready to embrace it. You know, like I say, it'll be different for me, being that over the past few years I've been in China, and the style of basketball there, you know, it's very different than anywhere else, you know, in the world. And like I said, I've spent a little time in the Philippines, and it was even, you know, a little bit more consistent there than in China. But my natural style of play is NBL. You know, they gritty, you know, set the tone, set the pace, move it around, attack the rim, attack plays to create. You know, that style. That's my style. So I think it's almost like coming home.
Yeah, nice. And we actually had Kevin Pritchard on the podcast last week, and he gave us some really good stories about a previous teammate of yours. And obviously we are a fan podcast. We get a lot of emails and messages about this guy. So I want to run this past you and see if you got any good stories for us, or just talk about his game. And that's Lance Stephenson. Stories that we can put to air as well, Donald. It is a family-friendly show.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if he'd be okay with me telling the story, because it was the wrong time. The timing was bad for all of this. But
yeah,
if you're asking for a story of Lance Stephenson, it's not funny, but I will tell you. So my first year in Indiana, we started out pretty hot, really hot. You know, we were picked to win. We were actually picked to win the East, you know, even over Brun and them, just because we had taken them to 7 games the year before. And the way that the season was going, you know, we were number 1. They were, I think, at that point, number 2 or 3. So they still had some catching up to do. Eventually, you know, of course, they finished 2, we finished 1. But during the midst of that season, we started out hot. Started out, you know, like I say, one of the hottest teams in the NBA. So did Portland. Portland was one of the best teams in the West at that time with LaMarcus, with Batum, with, of course, Lillard and company. But so we get to maybe around February, and for some reason it starts to shift. Like, we kind of lose our mojo. We kind of drop a few games. Those are dog days. It's cold, snowy, consistently practicing game after game. We're traveling, so the dog days hit, and that's a real thing. So we dropped a couple games, and I don't know if that's the reason why we made a little change in the middle of the season, because at that point we traded away Granger. I don't know if he went to Philly or where. We traded away. I think we released Orlando Johnson.
Yeah.
We ended up picking up Bynum. We ended up picking up Evan Turner. We ended up picking up LaVoy Allen. And so we're still making our way through, the rest of the season. And of course, there was a little animosity between the new guys and the guys who had already been solidified in their roles, being Lance, of course. So Evan Turner's coming in. He's who he is. And then, they butt heads a little bit. And, that's has to be expected with two emotional, dominant guys. They just, they think the world of themselves, and they're great guys, great players. But, it's the egos were there.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with that. We've dropped a few games, and we're going into the playoffs. First round, we see Atlanta, and we're prepping for Atlanta. The first game, actually. We haven't even played a game in the playoffs yet. Play Atlanta in the first round. We end up winning, of course, playing Wizards, and then, of course, seeing Miami, Eastern Conference Finals. But as we're prepping for Atlanta, and people would ask, wow, how did the Pacers struggle with Atlanta in the first round? Like, they took us to 7. And that the practice before the game, the last practice before the first round of the playoffs, we were practicing, and it's pretty competitive practice. And Lance and Evan, they start kind of chirping at each other and going back and forth. And I don't know what happened, but Evan pushes Lance. Lance lashes out and grabs Evan by the neck, scratches his neck. And of course, he's not trying to scratch him, but he grabs him. And as Evan, pulls away, he scratches his neck. Of course, we all break it up. Hey, chill. It was, like I said, it was competitive practice. It's one of them. We're getting ready for the playoffs. This is the type of tone we're trying to set. We want to show guys we're a tough team, as Indiana teams always are, tough teams. Scratches his neck. Evan leaves the court, walks through the tunnel, and says, "I quit. I'm not coming back tomorrow. Y'all play whoever the hell y'all want to play tomorrow." And everybody's like, what the hell is going on? Like, wait, what? We need you to play, bro. Like, what's? And of course, Lance is just sitting there smiling and laughing through the whole thing. He's unbothered. Like, he's really just like laughing at the whole thing. But everybody else is like, wait, nah, bro. Like, Evan, you need to come back. We got to finish practice. 1, 2. What do you mean you quit? Like, no, we have to. We got to get this under control before the game tomorrow. We're starting the playoffs tomorrow. So to me, that was funny because, of course, we ended up handling business and taking care of Atlanta. And it took 7, though. And it shouldn't have taken 7. But we had a lot of things going on going into the playoffs that year. And like I say, there's a lot of other funny stories with Lance. But that, to me, was one of the funniest ones because he literally grabs this man or tries to grab him by the neck. And, of course, he pulls back, and Lance has these nails, and he scratches his neck up. And Evan is like, I'm not coming back. I quit. How you look at my neck? How am I supposed to come back playing in this? Because he had got scratched up pretty bad. And, of course, the next day, Evan shows up at the locker room. It's all love. And we go out and play Atlanta. And, the rest is history,
And just to finish up on that team, I know you've talked about in the past, Dan Burke's been one of your many mentors, and obviously he's not with the Pacers anymore, but he was with them for a long time. So what was Dan Burke like, and how much was the focus on defense, especially that year?
Oh man, Dan Burke is special. That's my guy. Without Dan, I don't think I come back the second year. You know, he was so heavily influenced, you know, in the room, you know, in the war rooms with making decisions. You know, KP is, of course, the GM, Larry, of course, the president, and, you know, those guys are making decisions. But, you know, of course, Frank Vogel is the coach. But Dan, he held a lot of weight, you know, in those rooms, in those talks with, you know, who's going to help us, who can help us. And he saw me as one of the guys who could help the team. And at some point, he was like, you know, Sloan's going to be a guy that's going to help us. I don't know how, I don't know when. We're going to use him sparingly, but at some point, he's going to be a guy. And of course, it ended up paying off the next year when we were dealing with a lot of the injuries, and I'm seeing a lot of minutes, and they comfortable with me being the guy that's running the show. That all came through him, and I really appreciate him for that. And I talk to him every now and again. And even when I went to Brooklyn and different things like that, I'd meet up with him at center court and we'd talk. But he led our defense. All the Roy Hibbert straight ups, and the way that we communicated and the way that we ran our system and was in sync, it was all him. You know, I give, you know, Vogel a lot of the credit as well, but Dan was special for the Pacers, and he's going to be special for the 76ers as well.
Donald, those Pacers teams really kind of changed the game at that time. So a lot of the things you just spoke about, that defensive focus, the verticality, that team kind of believing in each other, not relying on any one superstar. And you guys had success. You know, you contended for a couple of years there. What are your greatest memories of those teams?
Man, just the togetherness. I've been on a lot of different teams around the world, whether it was G League, whether it was college, whether it was AAU, Germany, Philippines, China. I haven't experienced Australia yet, but just how that team was well put together. Like, they got the right pieces for the right system that they was trying to fulfill, because there was no egos, you know, outside of what I just said with when we made some trades, and, you know, but outside of that, everybody was bought in. You know, whether David West had 10 points one game or whether he had 25 the next game, he didn't care. Whether PG, of course, who was our superstar, whether he had 35 points one game or whether he had 15 the next, he didn't care. You know, same with Lance. You know, Lance is the flashy one on the team, but no, he didn't care whether he had 10 points or whether he had 18. So it just kind of trickled down from, I'm going to do my job, and whatever's needed this game, that's what I'm going to do. Even George Hill, you know, second year after he came back from his injuries and, you know, got back in the lineup, he had games where he had 35, 40, you know, 25, 20, but nobody saw George Hill as an offensive threat like that. He's capable. And that was the thing with the team. Everybody's capable, but we're going to do what the team needs at this point in time to get the W. And that's what everybody thought. You know, CJ Watson, Scola, Hibbert, of course, like, he's an all-star center with that, you know, Mount Rushmore defense of the straight up, you know. So everybody did what was needed for us to win. And that was, like I say, until I got there, I didn't realize that, because even in college, you know, we didn't play like that. You know, in AAU, we didn't play like, everybody was out for theirs. Everybody was trying to impress, you know, everybody's trying to prove in those different type of things. But on that team, it was, you know, our sacrifice. You know, hey, this game, I may not be able to score much, but I'm going to create. I'm going to play defense. I'm going to help rebound. You know, I'm going to defend. I'm going to get deflections, you know, and just different type of things like that. And it really made me open my eyes on, I don't always have to be an offensive threat for us to win. And so that's kind of like carried over to my basketball life since then, since 2013. And so that's why now my approach to everything is, I'm not telling you I'm about to go get 30 a game or try to get 25 a game or 20. I'm going to do what's needed. It may not be my game offensively. You know, it may not be my game as far as getting in the paint, you know, so I'm not going to force that. You know, I'm not going to force trying to shoot threes. I'm not going to force trying to be a passer this game. You know, I may need to score this game. You know, so that's just how that kind of opened my eyes on that level, which is the NBA. You know, that's the highest level where guys want to reach. You know, I want to go to the NBA and things like that. So guys doing it on that level and are superstars in Paul George, Hibbert, you know, Lance, things like that. They took that type of approach to the game. And so that kind of rubbed off on me to see that, you know, it's not always about scoring. It's not always about the numbers. It's how can you affect the game? And so, like, I'll tell a lot of guys that now. Like, they'll come to me, oh, man, you gonna average 20? You gonna average, I'm gonna do whatever my team needs me to do. You know, and that's whether it's running the show, whether it's being a playmaker, whether it's attacking downhill, whether it's being a catch and shoot guy, whatever it is, that's what I need to do.
As Homicide would say, it's about doing it by committee, isn't it? So we'll wrap it up there, though, Donald. Mm-hmm. We appreciate you coming on the show. It means a lot. Good luck with the 36ers this season. We'll be tuning in for sure. Appreciate you.
All right, thank you, man. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
And there it was, the interview with Donald Sloan and the Paceroos. Evan Turner, I quit, Justin. How'd you feel when Donald Sloan dropped that info?
Wow, yeah. Well, if you actually watched it on YouTube, you would have probably seen all me and Alex's and Tom's eyes light up and probably like gasp, because no one knew that. You know, Indy Stars reported that fight with Lance Stephenson and Evan Turner. Some players have come out in the past and said, oh, it was nothing, it was a little scuffle. But to hear, you know, the scratch marks and the I quit storming out of practice, Lance laughing in his face, like, wow, that was so interesting.
Heated. I think, Alex, it just, I don't know about you, but every time they talk about that season and the moves that were made, just get a little bit sad because of what could have been if we'd probably just stood pat, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he talked about that a little bit. You know, they were going insanely well to start the season. Then all of a sudden they just started dropping games in the back half of the year. So as a Pacers fan, that year brought a lot of pain because of the trade for obviously Danny Granger leaving the team. And then Evan Turner didn't work out. Bynum didn't work out. It was just a disaster second half of that year.
It's amazing. Some sort of pundits around the media say, oh, you know, one player doesn't make a team, but one player can clearly break a team, or one move can clearly break a team. You take Danny Granger off that team, you put Evan Turner on that team, and all of a sudden you don't really have the leadership that you had before. Evan Turner's known to be a little juvenile in the way that he approaches the game and a little bit quirky in his personality. He's an acquired taste, I think I'd probably describe him as. And it was clear that the move for leadership out and youth and exuberance in just didn't pay off. We sort of all said that at the time, but you can't question Larry Bird. He did go all in. I think we've spoken about that with KP, and that at least he went all in. But Justin, I think you just can't underestimate Danny Granger's importance to that locker room. And I think whenever anyone talks about losing a leader, that's when alarm bells have to start ringing about any contender in any year.
Yeah, you're right. I think David West has come out and said as soon as Danny Granger was traded, he knew they weren't going to do anything serious. So, yeah, it was such a pity. But, you know, we've mentioned on the podcast, I'll never regret Larry Bird for what he did. You know, if Andrew Bynum worked out to be back up to Roy Hibbert coming off the bench, if Evan Turner worked out over an unhealthy Danny Granger, we could have won the championship. But they just didn't work out. And unfortunately, you know, it's all hindsight, isn't it?
It is. Now, looking forward to the next couple of games. We've got the Celtics again in 2 days' time, by the time you see this the next day. And then the Cavaliers on New Year's Day. So there's a real chance that if we can get over the Celtics again, that we can start the season 5-0. Alex, what chance do you give us against the Celtics after what was a pretty heartbreaking loss for them today?
I think if Vic comes back, I don't see why we can't beat him again. Obviously, I'm still waiting for Miles to start hitting his threes. Justin Holiday struggling from three. So there's some things that can go the Pacers' way. Obviously, the Celtics, the same can happen on their end. So you never know. They're a great team. Jason Tatum is unbelievable. Clearly one of the best players in the East and the league. So they're going to have their hands full, but I think they can pull it out.
Justin, any concerns with the Celtics, but more to the point, the Cavaliers and the Knicks thereafter? Is there a chance of if we come across the Celtics twice in a row, is there a chance of a danger game against the Cavs?
Oh, for sure, definitely. I mean, Cavs just beat Philadelphia today. They kicked their bottom. So yeah, Cavs are dangerous. I think that they can beat anyone. So yeah, I think I didn't expect the Pacers to beat Celtics today. So I was pretty surprised. Definitely no Oladipo. Hopefully we get Oladipo back for the next game. But yeah, I mean, we're 3-0. I did not expect that. I don't think the Pacers organization expected that. They've been preaching how it's going to be a slow build this year. We're going to drop early games, but we want to be ready for the playoffs. But, what a start to the season. And there's, like Alex mentioned, there's so many players that can play better. Holiday's played bad. Both the Holiday brothers. Doug McDermott's played pretty well, but Miles hasn't found his shot. There's TJ Warren's been off and on. We can still get a lot better, which is really exciting.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for growth. Alex, can you just put a parental advisory on this episode for Kick Their Bottoms by Justin there? I think it was, I'm concerned that kids are listening, Justin. Just be careful. Guys, we'll wrap it up there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our podcast across Apple and Spotify and across social media at the Paceroos on Twitter and Instagram. I hope to bring you more content in the new year. Happy New Year. And hopefully 2021 is a lot better than 2020. This has been the Paceroos Podcast.